much for watching CBS 8 Plus, and welcome to our weekly Throwback Show. I'm Heather Myers. Each week we will dive back into the CBS 8 archives to find some of San Diego's most memorable moments. In this week's edition, we're celebrating President's Day by taking a look at former commanders-in-chief who visited San Diego. We begin with President Lyndon B Johnson, who in November of 1967 was on a coast-to-coast tour of U.S. military installations. The whirlwind trip included a stop at the now-closed El Toro Marine Air Base near Irvine before a tour of Camp Pendleton.
The time a president showed up here was in 1942, 25 years ago. The occasion was the opening of Camp Pendleton, and the president was Franklin D. Roosevelt. This afternoon at 1:30, Lyndon B Johnson became the second president to set foot on the big base north of Oceanside. He arrived by helicopter for the third stop in his cross-country trip, which included a massing of the colors on the football field in the 5th Division area of the base. At the 50-yard line, the president took honors. The band played ruffles and flourishes, and a 21-gun salute sounded. Major General Lewis J. Fields and Major General Wood B. Kyle accompanied the president to the platform. On hand at the platform, Secretary of Defense Robert S. McNamara. The president and the thousands of spectators witnessed a depiction of Marine Corps history from the Revolutionary War right up to Vietnam. Then a 200-pound birthday cake, a Marine Corps tradition, was brought up for the president to cut. The president gave the first piece of cake to Major General Lewis J. Fields, commanding officer at Camp Pendleton. Before leaving the pageant area, the president made a brief speech in support of his Vietnam policy and the men fighting in that country.
I have come here today from across the country for two very important reasons. To pay tribute to the United States Marine Corps on its birthday, and to salute the Marines around the world who are following 192 years of valor. Here at Pendleton, men know what the commitment to freedom must sometimes cost. Marines are winning in Vietnam, where the only victory that we seek is to keep a small country out of the hands of aggressors. You and I know that it is harder and tougher to ask for and to achieve a restrained and limited victory. One could surrender or start World War III, and could do either without much help.
Some observers say this visit marks the beginning of the 1968 presidential campaign. Others say Mr. Johnson just wants to spend Veterans Day with the boys in uniform. Whatever his motives, Mr. Johnson caused quite a stir here today at Camp Pendleton. George Lewis reporting for TV8 News.
Next up, the 39th U.S. President's trip to America's finest city back in October of 1979. Community leaders lined up to greet President Jimmy Carter while others watched from afar. He even surprised members of the press and scouts from Tierra Santa by approaching them after he arrived, all with that legendary big grin on his face.
The welcoming committee was made up of politicians and community leaders. They lined up on the airfield to greet the president while everyone else watched. Then Mr. Carter surprised everyone, including the Secret Service. He walked over to the press area and a group of young scouts from Tierra Santa who were there to catch a glimpse of Jimmy Carter. They got more than expected.
Pleasure to see you all. Hello. I used to be a scoutmaster myself. I sympathize with you. Good to see you all. Good morning to you. Hi, boys. You'll work hard, okay? I want all of you to make eagle before you're through, okay?
Mr. Carter appeared to be in good humor and was very cordial. However, no more time was wasted. The president was whisked off to the Hyatt Islandia, preceded by a motorcade and plenty of security. Mr. Carter came to San Diego to talk to labor leaders. The AFL-CIO's Building and Construction Trades are holding a convention at the Hyatt Islandia. A small crowd gathered to see the president arrive, including a handful of protesters. The last few days, the nation's economy has taken a nosedive. Interest rates reached an all-time high, and the stock market went haywire. So far, unemployment levels haven't been affected, and President Carter promised his audience today that they won't be.
Our goal is full employment, and to me this means full employment for construction workers as well. In fighting inflation, we do not sacrifice construction jobs. I reject the advice of those who think the only way to cure inflation is to throw millions of people out of work. This has been done in the past by administrations before mine, but I guarantee you that I will not fight inflation with your jobs.
His address sounded like a campaign speech, but his schedule did not allow him much time to work a crowd. As soon as his speech was over, it was off to the Hotel del Coronado, his second and last stop in San Diego. People lined the street near the hotel, and a large crowd met him when he arrived for a reception there. Inside, in the ballroom, he circulated among local leaders, supervisors, judges, city council members, and religious figures. He was running 10 minutes behind schedule, but he didn't appear hurried as he shook hands and gave away a few hugs. His second speech resembled the first, with a few exceptions.
During the time of the Korean War, my wife Rosen and I and my oldest son Jack and Chip lived here in San Diego. Coronado was looked on as the retired naval officer's heaven, and I never quite reached that high and exalted position. I had to take second best President of the United States. But it's not too late.
Advance people for the White House warned that the president's visit would be short, and it was. He arrived in the morning and was gone by noon. San Diego's brief encounter with the President of the United States. Liz Purcell, News 8.
Well, before he served as the 40th U.S. president and California governor, Ronald Reagan made several trips to San Diego. One of the earliest in our archives is from 1962. He weighed in on that year's presidential election while in town for a speaking engagement. Now, little did he know back then that San Diego would be the last stop on his 1980 presidential campaign trail.
Not often the fellow in your stature and position as an actor would take upon himself to say back a political candidate as you did Richard Nixon.
Well, I don't know.
Publicly.
Frank Sinatra and the boys were over on the other side. For the other candidate, there's been more of this in Hollywood than people are prepared to realize. Back through every campaign, I can remember the people in our business, just like in any community, getting worked up and staging rallies, and some of them, like Frank, didn't attempt to make speeches. They went out and sang songs, and somebody else made the speech. Well, I don't happen to be able to sing. And there was no sense in hurting my candidate's chances by trying. So, you know, in Hollywood, if you can't sing or dance, you wind up being an after-dinner speaker.
The confident and efficient campaign of Ronald Reagan came aboard a troubled industry today. The San Diego-based U.S. tuna fleet welcomed Governor and Mrs. Reagan to a freshly painted tuna boat called Discoverer. It was a chance to greet campaign supporters and feast on ocean delicacies and prime rib. But it also was an opportunity for the fishermen to unload their burdens to the GOP standard bearer. Mr. Reagan arrived early and used the extra time to board a nearby tuna boat, Bold Producer. He was told of threats to the U.S. tuna fleet from other countries and restrictions from what tuna industry people call unfair U.S. environmental regulations and quotas. Other nations, they say, fish with total freedom.
Say 35% of our fleet has already gone foreign, and there's probably another 30% that are considering returning.
Mr. Reagan then spoke to the gathering and acknowledged the threat to the U.S. tuna fleet.
It is one of the most endangered species in America today. The family-owned and inherited and passed on business.
He was interrupted by a few protesters and gained the upper hand by saying,
"Why don't you just write me a letter and let me go on talking to these people who want to listen?"
Ronald Reagan was introduced as a man who is no stranger to the tuna industry, but this was his first visit on board a tuna boat. His challenge, if elected, will to see that those tuna boats that are flying the Stars and Stripes will not switch to that of a foreign flag. John Killian, News 8 at the Embarcadero.
A crowd estimated at perhaps 20,000 greeted the Reagans in the Fashion Valley parking lot. Mayor Pete Wilson introducing the Republican candidate about an hour behind schedule, the campaign wind down running late all day. Reagan called it the largest crowd of the campaign and used his huge audience to again attack Jimmy Carter's record of high inflation, unemployment, and interest rates as a major tragedy for the American family.
Are you really better off than you were in 1976? Is your life more secure? Is your family more stable? Your future more promising? You don't need to see the statistics. You know the answers. You've just given them.
Reagan said it's time for economic fair play for Americans, charging again that Carter has violated every economic pledge he's made. At one point, while talking about unemployment, Reagan reacted to a series of obscenities yelled by a heckler.
There are cities in Michigan. Oh, shut up. My mother always told me that I should never say that, but this is the last night of a long campaign, and I've heard so many like him, I thought just once I could say it.
As Reagan sought to close out the campaign with a decidedly upbeat rally, he again pledged his administration would offer less government waste, lower taxes, a balanced budget, more defense spending, and no peacetime draft.
No, I believe we can have a professional volunteer military if we will pay them on a scale commensurate with the sacrifice we're asking of them.
Reagan left this Republican stronghold confident he'll carry California and the election. He and Mrs. Reagan returned to their ranch to await the vote. But the campaign did not end smoothly. Reagan's plane, bound for Los Angeles, had to land at Burbank Airport instead because of heavy fog. Dave Cohen, News 8, Fashion Valley.
Well, President Bill Clinton and the First family visited San Diego twice while he was in office. The first came a little over a year into his first term, where they experienced the region's top tourist activities, including Old Town and the then San Diego Wild Animal Park. The Clintons returned years later, attracting curious crowds during their stay in Coronado.
The president and the first lady were off to dinner after a reception for 150 local VIPs and dignitaries. Many of those invited tonight, political supporters, others familiar faces in San Diego. It was a chance for some to ask for favors.
There was a lady who said to me today, she said, would you please ask the president to help us keep the cross on Mount Helix and Mount Soledad, and I promised her that I would do that.
A small and quiet group promoting the use of marijuana picketed outside during the reception, which lasted for about 2 hours. The reception comes after a very busy day for the First family, who took in a number of local tourist spots and signed into law education reform that promises new standards.
I think he's having a wonderful time, and it was a happy coincidence that he and Mrs. Clinton were here. The bill had to be signed by tomorrow, and I had the wonderful fortune of being able to come back to a great school district and see it happen at one of San Diego City schools.
You look like America will look in the 21st century, and we have to win with you.
The Goals 2000 Act authorizes the use of $650 million in federal funds for education reform. Today, the president began his day at Zamorano Fine Arts School, encouraging students and taking a firm stand for education reform.
I thought it was pretty neat that they went to our school instead of all the other schools that were in session this week. And it's not every day the president comes to your school.
Following the rally, it was on to Old Town, where the president and the first lady had lunch. And the president even stopped to leave a going-away present for some construction workers along the way. Chelsea was visiting the zoo, but the family later met at the Wild Animal Park, where they enjoyed an up-close and personal visit with the park's residents. Robin Mangren, News 8.
Can we get y'all to stay still, please?
In the cold, dark night, these die-hard fans hang on, hoping the President of the United States recognizes their efforts. Braving wind and cold, they say it's worth it.
I've never seen a president before, any kind of president, so this will be my first one.
We got to see him for about 8 seconds when he rode by on the bicycle. Hillary went by first, and then the president went by.
Have you enjoyed having the president here?
Oh yeah, it's been interesting, and down here I actually met a lot of people.
For the past week, Coronado has played host to the First family and a host of others who migrated to the tiny island when the First family flew in.
I really wanted him just to be able to get away and get a vacation. I was kind of thrown off that everybody was staying around and bothering him, but it's been really nice. Everybody's been real happy since he's here.
From dawn to dusk, you could find them here lining the streets, and they came from all over the world just to catch a glimpse of the first family.
That's great. We are lucky for we being in Coronado at the same time the Mr. President is here.
Today was a day of recreation, not rest. On the beach this morning, it was a walk, not run, that enabled hundreds to catch a close and personal look at the president. Saxophones were on hand to play the president's high school fight song. For the president, it was then off to the golf course for 18 holes, and then only hours later, a 1-hour bike ride for the president and the First Lady.
Next up, we look back at George W. Bush and his time in San Diego. He visited 3 times during his 8 years in office, touring the devastation of San Diego's 2 largest wildfire disasters and rallying thousands of local Marines after being re-elected president.
After landing at Shadow Hill School in his Marine One helicopter, President Bush was driven into the fiery destruction that claimed 90% of homes in Harbison Canyon. The commander-in-chief spent nearly half an hour consoling residents who lost everything because of the Cedar Fire. He hugged them, offering words of encouragement about the future. Some homeowners even took a moment to take a picture with the president as they told him about how their lives changed following the disaster.
The best thing I can do is to listen and hug and just empathize as best as I can empathize. It's very difficult for me to put myself in their position. I've met some families here that are obviously crushed by the material loss, and they look forward to rebuilding and rebuilding their lives, and the role of government, the federal government, the state government, the local government is helping as best as we can.
The president also spent several minutes speaking with military widow Jennifer Ricard, whose husband died 2 years ago. He had this advice for the mother of 3-year-old Catherine, who now plays in a sandbox, one of the few things left untouched by the blaze.
Hang in there, and he kept giving me a hug and telling me it would be okay, and that I miss my husband and I miss his memories, but I'll always have my memories.
The 30-year-old SDSU graduate on the lighter side had this observation about the president.
He's a lot larger than I thought. He doesn't look that large on TV. I noticed he was wearing his cowboy boots, which I thought was, cool.
And after speaking with several more families who lost it all, America's leader offered these thoughts about the community.
I suspect the citizens here who are at the darkest moments will find light when a fellow citizen loves them. And the response, as I understand, in this neighborhood has been terrific, where people have come together and
With 7,000 Marines wildly cheering his arrival, President Bush gave them just the sort of greeting he knew they wanted.
It was getting a little quiet back at the White House, so I decided to drop in on the Devil Dogs.
The president praised the hard work of Pendleton Marines in Iraq, citing the recent siege of Fallujah as an example of Marine might in the face of terrorists.
They hid bombs in mosques, but they could not hide from the United States Marines.
President Bush also acknowledged the sacrifice. Camp Pendleton has one of the highest casualty rates of any base in the nation. Nearly 270 Pendleton Marines have died serving in Iraq.
America prays for the families of the fallen, and we stand with the families of the fallen.
After honoring the troops, the president took time to visit with them, smiling and chatting with any who could get close. Then, following a long lunch on base, President Bush met privately with families of fallen Marines.
It's nice to have a president that supports you. It's nice to know he'd take his time to come out and see you.
Good morale booster for all the Marines. President Bush arrived in San Diego early Tuesday morning at MCAS Miramar. He met with a few select troops and volunteers before boarding Marine One for Pendleton.
Your fellow citizens are proud of you, and so is your commander-in-chief.
And they are proud of him.
Just a great feeling.
Proud to be standing up for the president, they say, stands up for them.
May God bless you, and may God continue to bless the United States of America.
President Bush offered Kendra Jeffcoats a hug and a promise that the federal government will be there for her and other San Diego County residents who lost everything in this week's fires.
There's a better day ahead. That today your life may look dismal, but tomorrow life's going to be better. And to the extent that the federal government can help you, we want to do so.
Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger joined the president on his walk through the Jeffcoats Rancho Bernardo neighborhood. They saw the devastation firsthand. The Jeffcoats lost everything.
We appreciate your spirit. Really do. All of us who met you were very impressed by your determination to deal with this tough moment in your life.
President Bush also stopped at the Rancho Bernardo Rec Center, which is now a makeshift shelter. And he shook hands with firefighters, thanking them for their tireless service.
I'm telling you, there's a lot of folks that live up in these hills that have their houses because of you. And they're not in a position to thank you. But we are. And so we thank you for helping save lives and save property.
The president also toured San Diego by air so he could see all of the devastation across the county. He says it was important to come out and see the situation firsthand.
To assess the needs, to listen to the concerns, and to respond. And that's exactly what we've been doing, and that's exactly what we'll continue to do.
The president's entire visit, just 3 hours, but he pledged long-term support. As he put it, we're not going to forget you in Washington, D.C.
God bless you all. God bless the people of this state.
Thank you so much for watching. For more great content on CBS 8 Plus like this, click on the tabs at the top of the screen, and we'll see you next week.